to see you again, Dan.
Nice to see you again.
So we thought it'd be a really good opportunity to speak about combat stress. There's a book by Gary Kennedy, which is The Silent War, which is a colleague, a military veteran that you have very close personal ties with, but also to sort of draw down upon the fact that Gosport is a military veterans town, so to speak, and actually to sort of bring attention to actually how conflict can affect veterans coming into conflict, at combat, and what help and support's available.
Yeah.
Should we do that?
Yeah.
There you go, Dan. Thank you.
So, Gary, we spoke about it in the podcast previously. Gary is someone I've worked closely with for years, and the reason why he's so close to my eyes is he got me into the outdoor fitness game. When I was a young PTI, around 2012, 2013, I started working at Borden, which was a phase 2 training establishment at the time, and we trained recruits together, and we worked really closely with each other. And then he got me into working in the bootcamp game, and that is why I'm where I am now. So I actually owe a lot to him. My entire business and everything is owed to that man. He had already done a tour of Iraq, and he had done, I believe, 2 tours of Afghanistan at that point. I'd done a tour of Afghan as well, but mine wasn't anywhere near as kinetic as a lot of my friends have been.
When you say kinetic, what do you mean by that?
As
Sorry
in
for people that...
Contacts.
Yes.
Things that I've seen.
So like active engaged contact
Active
with
engaged,
the enemy?
yeah, contact with the enemy. There was only one time there was only 2 times when I was a bit, that I think of from my tour out there, when I felt like I was in danger. One, when we was coming into a place called Goresh, when there was if anyone's been to Afghanistan, you know Goresh. There's a bridge that goes over a wadi, which is like a riverbed. We were in vehicles called Mastiff variants. A goat herder come across the road, got in front of one of the wagons. One of the wagons ran over his goat in front of me, and his goat was obviously died. But then it's all his hearts and minds. So then the convoy commander got out and had to give him some money for his goat. While we're doing that, it's the hustle and bustle. You attract loads of people, and they come out of everywhere. And we were just swamped.
Is it quite worrying time in that?
It's worrying because you're in what's called a VP, which is a vulnerable position, and we were on a bridge, and there was only one way on this bridge and one way off. And we're in this position, and I'm sat there, and I was on top cover, which is the machine gun on top of the vehicle, and I was the vehicle mechanic, and the wagon in front of us broke down, and then I got called out. I got called Tina. My name's Dan Turner, and my second name, so obviously I got called Tina Turner.
Turner.
So they're like, Tina, come.
I would always call you Tina now.
Yeah, you can do. That was the hardest thing when I left the army, was getting used to being called my name again.
Yeah.
Because I was so used to being called Tina. Anyway, so I got down. I went over to the wagon. I lifted up the engine bed, like the manifold, and then basically what happened on them vehicles is you've got 2 fuel tanks, and the driver had switched from one to the other because he was empty on one, and something had happened and it wasn't primed. Okay. So there's a hand primer. It's the driver's job to make sure that everything is greased up and everything's nice and loose. I got there and it was seized, rusted shut. And I remember I did have my weapon system with me because I had to give it to somebody in the wagon, because you can't, you don't want to have anything like that. So I just wanted to get through. I had to push through crowds of local nationals to get up there. And I got on, and I'm trying to hand prime, and I'm looking, the crowd's getting bigger, we're attracting more and more attention, and there's just hedge line around, and then in your head, you just imagine yourself in crosshairs. And anyway, long story short, I couldn't get it primed, so we had to then look, and then we had to hitch it up to get towed, and time is something you're rarely afforded in hostile situations, and we needed to go. Thankfully, nothing happened, but then a week later, they obviously saw that as a VP, and then there was an IED, and the vehicle got blown up, and a couple of lads died in that very spot about a week later. That's something that hit me hard. Another time, on another patrol, we were coming into an area called Shazad, which was a village, and usually when we went in there, it was hustling and bustling as we were coming in. I remember the sun was just going down, and as it was coming in, there was no women and children anywhere, and it was quiet. And it's called atmospherics. Yeah. And you look around and you're like, this is bad, something's going to pop off. And then as we come in a long patrol into this PB, we just got ambushed from a hedge line. Before I had any time to know what's going on, obviously the bullets whiz over, but then before you know what's happening, it's over. And the problem with that is as well, is like the rules of engagement at that time, it was all about hearts and minds, and everyone was operating off a card called Card Alpha, which basically had a set of rules that you had to follow in engagement. And I know a lot of the infantry lads really struggled with it, because this is how black and white it was. If you were firing a weapon system at me and I actively saw you engaging me, and then you dropped that weapon system and turned around and walked away, I was no longer allowed to engage you, because you were no longer a threat. Because it was all about the preserving life piece. Because before, we were just firing into likely position, but then there was collateral, and then civilians were getting killed, and then it's all about the hearts and minds, and you're not going to win over people if you're killing civilians. So there is a reason why it's brought in. However, do I personally believe it got people killed, that system, that restraint? 100%. 100% it cost lives.
Because I think from what you said, if you have always had a method, a strategy, and then all of a sudden it gets flipped on its head, it kind of must have caused a degree of confusion.
There was a lot of confusion, and if you watch, there's a documentary, I believe it's Ross Kemp in Afghanistan is one. There was a lot of confusion about where you can, and lads, I just think lads felt like, that they were being told they couldn't engage targets, but they knew where the targets were, but they couldn't engage them. And they were just like, well, what are we going to do? Just sit here getting smashed all day, And I completely understand where that frustration come from. And like, no, I'm not saying I was a frontline soldier. I wasn't. I was a vehicle mechanic attached to various units. But what I was really lucky with is the fact that, because I was mainly working on a vehicle variant called Mastiff, I got to go around the country a lot, and I saw a lot of country, whereas a lot of people didn't. I was always in Chinooks going everywhere to help fix vehicles, and I got to talk to a lot of units and saw that frustration with them. But I've got friends that were, there was a guy I was paced with called Miles. He was at Liner with me. He got shot through the arm with a PKM, which is a Russian machine gun. Obviously, when the Russians extracted from Afghanistan in the 70s, they left a lot of their weapon systems there, and the Taliban were using them. And it's a 7.62 round, and that went in there in his arm, and it come out the back. So he had like a tiny little, like, looked like a BCG scar, and then out the back was his exit wound. And it was a crazy, and he had really bad PTSD, night terrors, bad, and he received treatment. My friend as well, that I went to school with, Louis, he was attached to 2 para, saw a lot of action, a lot of contact. My friend Rich was in the Marines, did 2 tours. The first tour wasn't too bad because he was a young lad and fearless. His second tour he had kids. And I remember I took over on Herrick 13, he was on Herrick 12, and Herrick was the name of the operation in Afghanistan, the UK effort. I took over, and I remember I got to Camp Bastion, and it was the second day I was there, and I bumped into him. And that's the first time I ever looked at him, and it was like, when someone's just not right behind the eyes, and they had had a really rough tour, and I know he had lost a lot of people. I mean, one in particular, he was on a QRF, which is Quick Reaction Force, and I don't know whether you read that, some of the people might remember reading about it. There was a Chinook that crashed, and they were the guys that got bugged out to go and try and rescue the people, and obviously the engine on the Chinook had fallen, and it trapped people in the back, and it was on fire. The people in there were basically essentially burning alive, and then because of the ammunition in there, all of that was clacking off as well. So you can imagine what they saw. And that's the worst thing that he saw, and that happened on that tour. And I remember seeing him, and I was like, there's something not right there. And like I said, I'm lucky. I count my blessings every day that I didn't see anything like that when I was out there. To be honest with you, I spent the majority of my army career as a glorified PE teacher / rugby player. When I went
what's
PTI.
important though? Morale is so important.
It is.
So we spoke. So tell me about Gary Kennedy. Tell me about this man.
So Gary, an absolute workhorse, and he was a driving force, behind when we first started off. We started off together. We called it Elements Outdoor Military Fitness, and he was the driving force.
So this is like your boot camp.
Yeah. So we all ran independently in Basingstoke at the time, and then my military rugby career really took off, and I just didn't have any time for it, so I just handed it all to Gary, and he built that from nothing to, he had multiple locations, he had people working for him. Then there was another company, and it used to be called Parafit, because it was based out of Old Browning Barracks and Aldershot, where the parachute regiment used to do their training. They're training for their soldiers there. Then a guy called Jason De Silva that we worked with, he was PT Corps, and he got out, and then he bought the company, and then he changed the name Parafit to Bootcamp UK.
Okay.
Gary started working for him. Then when I left the army, I started Elements Outdoor Military Fitness in Gosport Park, and then Gary was on at me all the time saying, you need to get onto this, and he's the one who convinced me to take the plunge and then go with a franchise with his company. And if it wasn't for him telling me that and getting me involved with them, it would be anywhere near as big as it is. And it's my biggest regret. I should have done it years before.
But Gary has a backstory, hasn't he? He has been awarded a Medal of Honor.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So yeah. So
with the PTSD and
yeah. Sorry, I digress.
Oh no, that's fine.
So Gary was when he was in Afghanistan, he was a vehicle mechanic, but he got attached to the Irish Guards,
Okay.
and because they were short, he ended up just being another rifleman in an infantry company. So effectively, he was just a combat soldier. They always say that you're a soldier first, tradesman second, and you do basic soldiering skills, but you don't do anything near the level of intense training that infanteers do. So for him to jump into that was a massive thing.
Big league.
And it's really good for him. It just shows his character to be accepted by the lads in that section, that they wanted him in that section. Very kinetic tour we spoke about before. He had a lot of contacts, a lot of IDs every single day. They were getting contacted. And there was one in particular where he got awarded the Queen's Commendation for Bravery, where he was on a rooftop with a lad providing overwatch, and the guy he was up there with got shot in the face.
This is in Afghanistan.
This is in Afghanistan, yeah. And while they were extracting that casualty, he was basically going from position to position on the rooftop, putting rounds down with people throwing out ammunition to him, and he was up there for hours. And there's a chapter in this book where he talks about that quite in depth, more in depth than I am. And then because of that, they got the guy down, and the guy who got shot in the face survived, thank God.
By his actions.
By his actions, yeah. And he was awarded the Queen's Commendation for Bravery for that. And he was only young, very young, I think early 20s when this happened.
So there were consequences though, weren't there, to what he saw?
Yeah, and it didn't affect him until much later on. There's a few warning signs when I worked with him, but I just put that down to just the stress of us running a business. And he slipped into alcoholism a lot, he'd drink to excess, really he struggled sleeping.
So he'd self-medicate?
He'd self-medicate with alcohol to just make him fall asleep, like taking strong painkillers, sleeping pills.
And you just put it down to work pressures?
I put it down to work pressures, and at the time I didn't notice the signs. If I could go back now, I probably would have noticed the signs. And then eventually it got really bad, and I found out that he tried to kill himself, and combat stress stepped in and categorically saved his life.
So Combat Stress is a charity?
Combat Stress is a PTSD charity, yeah, PTSD and mental health charity for veterans, and they do amazing work. And yeah, like I said, they categorically saved my friend's life, which is why Bootcamp UK partnered with them, and whenever we do any sort of fundraising, it's all for them. And Pete worked with Gary as well, because we all worked in Bournemouth together. So Pete, who's my partner with Bootfest, we just decided that that's who we're going to do it for every year. That's where the profits are going to go.
And it's quite tough, isn't it? Because I understand that quite a lot of guys are quite happy to talk about their emotions. I think by the very nature, if you're a military person, you're seen as a strong person who will take care of the world, fix things. So I think it's really hard to actually show that you're struggling. I think there is still that battle. So the fact that you have combat stress, and we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, I think that really hopefully opens doors. In fact, there is a charity for that.
And the problem is it doesn't affect people whilst they're still in.
Is it kind of afterwards?
It's afterwards mainly, because
When
what
they
people
can
get
relax.
out, they lose this. I don't know how to explain it. You won't understand unless you've served. And any veterans watching this and listening to this will understand. You make friends in the forces which will be like no other you've ever met in your life. And I don't know whether it's because you live on top of each other day in, day out. You won't understand the bonds that you form with people.
It may be something to do with trauma bonding as well. So if you go through trauma, it's been proven that it makes your bonding so tight and so strong, and you survive together.
Yeah, and it's when people leave, they lose that structure, they lose that routine. They feel like they don't have that. They don't feel like they don't fit in. There's always this like wanting to be back in that. I mean, I say it all the time, and he mentions this in his book. Even though it was a kinetic tour, and I agree with him on this, even though my experience was different, my wife can't get her head around this. I was in Afghanistan for 7 months. It was dangerous and it was hard, but I can categorically say it's the least stressed I've ever been in my life, because you've only got one thing to worry about, is you wake up, you work. There's no nighttime or daytime. You're either working or you're not working. You work, you train, you do your job. That's all you have to worry about. There's no outside stress. And he mentions that in his book, where he's like, even though we were getting contacted, all I have to worry about was the next patrol I was going on. That was it. No mortgage, no bills to worry about. Anything. It's a very, very weird.
No, it kind of makes sense though. Yeah. And then I suppose when you leave and that structure and that feeling of belonging falls away, is that a time when kind of almost like your brain can sort of decompress and then it hits you then, or what do you think?
I think, from a personal point of view, my transition into the civilian world was very much tapered. I can't speak because I went into the civil service and went and worked for the military. So I still had structure. I was around people in uniform. I was around the banter, everything. So for me, I still had that. So I can't really speak from experience there. But I just think people come away from it and they decompress, like you said, and things that wasn't really an issue. It's like little things. It's like you have to worry about your own dental. You have to worry, your food and everything like that. It's cooking for yourself and things. Little things that you take for granted as a normal civilian.
So did Gary get help from combat stress?
He did. Yeah, he had. I can't remember for the life of me her name. She's in the book, his therapist, and he speaks very highly of her, and I believe he still speaks to her now. He got help through them. They gave him coping mechanisms. He went and stayed at their HQ in Leatherhead. I think it's called Twyfit House.
Oh, so you've actually got...
I've actually been there,
There's actually accommodation as well.
So there's a centre there, where they've got like a music room, a chill out room, like a reading room, and veterans go there and they're there for like a week or so, or maybe prolonged periods, where they're like, see therapists, they get open discussion sessions, they can channel what they're feeling into music, and it's an amazing centre. If you haven't seen it, then
I think we need to look that up. So it's combat stress. It's got a 24/7 helpline as well, which always, whenever I see 24/7 helpline, that's really good, because sometimes at 2-3 in the morning it can feel like the darkest time. And you're on your own. So the fact you can talk to someone, and I appreciate you've got the Samaritans, but combat stress for military veterans, it's
a great asset,
isn't it?
It's a great asset. And with Boot Fest that we do, all the work that we do, even if it helps just one person,
100%.
And I don't know whether you've heard of the starfish analogy or the starfish story. So this is something that I didn't, a story that my friend told me, Chris Reeves, who started Win the Morning, Win the Day. So it's the same sort of initiative towards that mental health. And it's a story. So a man's walking his dog on a beach, and the tide's out, and then he comes on, and there's this young kid, and he's picking some stuff up off the floor and he's throwing it into the sea as quick as he can. And the man says to him, "What are you doing?" And he looks down and he sees he's picking up starfish and he's throwing them into the sea. And he says to him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "The tide's out and the sun's coming, the sun's beating in the sky. If I don't throw the starfish back in, they're going to die." And the man says, "Well, there's hundreds of thousands on the beach. You're not going to make much of a difference." And the little boy picks up the starfish and he throws it in the sea and he goes, "It made a difference to that one."
Oh my God. That's very impactful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And you're right, if it helps one person.
Yeah. And there's, it's really strange. I've got an 18-month-old, and one of the songs that we sing to him and play for him is a song called Streets of London by Ralph McTell. It's from 1969.
God, that's heartbreaking.
So the last verse about the old man outside the Seaman's Mission with fading memories and the ribbons. And I think there's a lyric that says, "In our winter city, the rain cries a little pity for one more forgotten hero in a world that doesn't care." And that sums up why I do and why we do what we do.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Dan.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Brilliant. Thank you.
So buy Gaz's book. It's on Amazon. All profits go to combat stress.
Yeah, Gary Kennedy, The Silent War.
Yeah.
Money going to combat stress. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Don't forget starfish.
Yeah, that's